Welcome to another episode of Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Julia Phoenix, and I'm really excited to dive in to the topic for today. It's something that feels really, really important to me and has been and is really a pillar of my foundational work in this life and my foundational practice and process. And it's so much of what I help guide others through in my work as well. And that is really the concept of self trust, and specifically, how do we trust ourselves, our magic, our medicine, and our spiritual gifts, our multidimensional gifts in a left brained world, in a world that is not designed necessarily to support trust in those things, right? So, just a little bit of background. I think that a lot of you listening probably already know that I work with the DNA and I work multidimensionally with people. I created my own modality called rapid shift integration. And it's stuff that a lot of people consider kind of out there. You know, some people use the term woo woo. I actually cannot stand that word. I find it to be so incredibly diminishing, right? I don't love it. A lot of you also might know that it took me a really long time to embrace my gifts and to step forward. And I think that self trust has been a struggle for me for most of my life. I mean, I grew up in an environment where, there was just like a constant experience of gaslighting and a constant message, explicitly and covertly, that was given to me that I was crazy and that I couldn't trust myself. I couldn't trust my perception. I couldn't trust my own discernment. I couldn't trust what I felt and knew to be true and right and correct for me. I couldn't trust my experiences, right? It was all supposed to come from the outside, right? And it's really interesting because I've mentioned before that I grew up in this kind of like spiritual community that, I really do feel is a cult. And there was a leader, like a guru figure inside of the cult. And so there was a lot of, as is typical in cult dynamics, there's a lot of giving away sovereignty. There's a lot of kind of giving away a lot of free will that goes on. And I think this happens for a variety of reasons, right? People don't feel safe to trust themselves. They don't know who they are. And they do need guidance, right? Like we need guidance. Guidance is a really important principle. And many of us don't have it in the appropriate ways that we need it growing up, right? We're not encouraged to connect to our own guidance and guided through that process, right? That developmental process of learning to trust how we process information, you know, learning to trust our unique ways of operating. We just don't get that, most of us, right? And there's a bunch of other stuff too. There's so many layers to this. There's like attachment wounding. There's like, and wanting like a mother and father figure. There's like the desire for belonging. There's the abnegation of responsibility, because it's like, if I were to trust myself, it's a pretty big responsibility for the choices that I'm making in my life. And I would just prefer to give that over to someone else. There are elements of manipulation and control, and this is not just psychological. This is not just emotional, although those elements are certainly there. This is energetic manipulation, and it can be very severe, right? But people are a vibrational match to that experience for different reasons, and people stay locked in to that experience for different reasons. I've also seen that multidimensionally, often when people are involved in a cult type of a scenario, there are ties from multiple lifetimes and sometimes from multidimensional realities with the group and with the leader, right? So we're replaying stuff, right? So there's so many different layers that go into that whole experience. But I've come to understand that a huge part of my life purpose and my mission is to help to shift and correct some of these things that really place us in a position to continue to externalize our knowing, to continue to give away our authority when it comes to what is true and what we really feel is best for our path. You know, this can show up in so many different ways. It shows up in dynamics within relationships, like love relationships, or even friendships with teachers, with family members, with friends. I see it a lot with business coaches and healers that, people lack this connection to themselves, and they lack this element of self-trust. And so they become a follower in the negative sense, right? It is okay to follow a leader. It is okay to learn from people who know more than you, who have experienced more than you, maybe in this life, who are in a different place on their path. But a really great leader, spiritual or otherwise, is always going to help guide you back to your inner knowing, and they will always respect your sovereignty. They're not going to fight you on making choices that you feel are best for you, even if they might, see that those choices could get you into trouble. They may share their opinion, but they're going to let you go your own way and do your own thing, right? However, a lot of people are just not even in a position where they feel they can hold that authority in the face of someone whom they perceive has more authority than them. Whether that's on a spiritual level, whether that's on the level of like business, or age or experience, or they just perceive that this person holds more power. And maybe they do have more access to their own power because they have a stronger channel, they have more access points, they're more embodied, right? But this perpetuates a cycle that keeps many people stuck. And I'm really interested in helping people get out of that cycle, helping people to find their true spiritual authority so that they can lead from that place, so that they can lead their lives from that place, their businesses, their relationships, so that they can make choices from a sovereign, connected, and empowered place, right? So for me, I'm really grateful to have the guidance that I have had. And there have been places where I've sort of fallen into these traps that I'm speaking about a lot, right? And of course I have, because otherwise I can't help anyone with it, you know? But there have also been times where, I've needed someone outside of me to, from a place of respecting my own sovereignty, um, reflect certain things to me, and activate certain things within me. Um, I was really comfortable doing things that I was like certified to do, trained to do, right? My training is mostly in the field of psychology and and like human development. And I felt really comfortable speaking about those things, right? I felt really comfortable with what was known and what you could also like read about and study in books. And that's the paradigm that we live in, isn't it? It's like, you know, we just live in a world where it's like there are these sort of 3D constructs. There are, certain measures of proof that are required. There are certain instruments for gathering information to legitimize or delegitimize something, right? And it's all very, very mental. It's the paradigm that values the mind more than it values experiential wisdom, right? And this goes back to kind of a masculine feminine imbalance in our society, but you'll see it everywhere. All of our academic institutions are based around this. Most schools are based around this, right? Uh, and so when you've got a multidimensional healing modality coming through you, right? Like you are suddenly starting to speak languages that you don't understand. You are starting to do hand movements. You're working on people's energy bodies. You're bringing through drawings that are encoded with certain frequencies, right? You're having knowings pour through. You're beginning to channel. You're beginning to move energy with your mind or your intention or your will or your hands, right? You're beginning to remember these gifts that you have. They are there for a reason. You're meant to utilize them, right? But there's no framework for them. There's no scientific proof. There might not even be a lot of teachers or people around you who are talking about what you're doing. I did not start getting into DNA activation because I found a teacher who was doing it and learned from them. For a while, I was actually scared to admit that publicly because, and it's not that I really withheld that information, it was just more that like I felt this like in my body anytime I was gonna say like, hey, I wasn't actually trained to do this, because that delegitimizes you in some people's eyes. And so if you don't have a strong enough foundation to back what it is you're doing, and to be able to stand in the face of that and say, you know what, I actually like it is legitimate. I know that it's legitimate. The results I get for people with my work is legitimate. This is my divine fucking assignment. So, like, I don't actually subscribe to the paradigm that you're in. Goodbye. You know, it takes a lot sometimes to be able to really stand in that in this world. And I'm not just talking about the people who will come at you with, like, maybe like, I mean, there's multiple different kinds of people you'll deal with, right? You'll deal with maybe individuals who come forward and they're like in a certain very religious paradigm, something like this, and they're gonna say like you're doing the devil's work or something like that. That's one kind of element. There's the very, very scientific people that are just gonna think anything, like this is just total hogwash. They're gonna ask you for proof. They're going to try to disprove. They might make fun of you, right? These are certain realities. It's not that I've experienced an overabundance of these things happening as I've come forward with my work and with my gifts, but it has happened. It does happen, especially in the online space. You're going to be questioned. You're going to have naysayers. You're going to have people who, you know, and they're going to poke those spots too that are sensitive for you, which is why that vibration of self trust, that energy of self trust that you hold is so incredibly important. Because if you do not have that, you will spin. You will spin out, and then you can't hold the medicine. You can't transmit what you're here to transmit. right? And this is what I'm really interested in because I want people to feel empowered to be able to transmit what they're here to fucking transmit. It's not happening, it's not coming through you for no reason, right? But it's like I stayed with all of those gifts behind a wall for a really long time because I was so scared, you know? And it did take a particular mentor, working with a particular mentor who was able to really see and reflect and back me in those gifts. And this was a mentor that I really, really respected, right? She's like an incredible master energy worker. The only reason I'm not mentioning her by name is because I don't have her explicit permission to do that. And so I don't know, maybe I'll ask her and then see if I can put her in the show notes or something. Because she really helped me a lot. And she's also someone who's very unconventional. She's also someone that supports individuals trusting themselves and their gifts and supports the free will of autonomous individuals with power and agency. She holds people in their power, right? Which was a different kind of experience for me. And yet she had so much multidimensional knowledge and experience, and I could feel how anchored she was with that and how much integrity she held in those spots. So her reflections did really matter to me, you know. Um, that was a really big deal, but it's not because she told me, you know, that I believed or that I like, you know, it was because she reflected it to me and it pinged the place inside of me that already knew and invited that to expand and amplify, you know. I am really anchored at this point in time in what I do, in the sense that people can have whatever opinions they want to have about it. People can challenge me on it if they want to unfollow me, if they think I'm full of shit. It's okay, you know? But when I speak about self trust, I feel like this is really important because, on a foundational level, I think people are really confused about what that means. And I want to define what I mean by that in this particular context, right? A lot of times people give reasons and excuses for why they don't trust themselves based on the behaviors that they have, the feelings that they have, the thoughts that they have that are distorted. And that makes sense. Like, that's fair, right? Like, for example, when I was struggling in my addictions, I'm obviously not going to be able to trust myself in a lot of ways because I'm going to say that I'm going to do something and then I won't do it, right? I'm going to say I'm never going to use again and then I'll pick up and use, right? That's because I'm out of alignment with the structural integrity of my parts system. Like, my psyche is fractured, and so there are these parts of me that are scattered in different directions and pulling against each other, right? This is a pretty, I think, commonly and widely known concept at this point in many circles. Maybe you're not familiar with it, but this is the foundational principle of like parts work and a lot of trauma healing methods that are out there now, including IFS, internal family systems, which was created by Richard Schwartz. Um, you know, there's inner children that are acting out and choosing my partners for me, right? And so it's like, which part of me am I supposed to trust? Which part of me am I supposed to trust? You know, the badass protector who doesn't need anyone and who's just strong as shit. The crying child. Which part of me am I supposed to trust? And like, when I'm speaking about self-trust, I'm actually not talking about trusting any of those parts of you. When I'm speaking about self trust, I'm actually speaking about trusting God. And if that word doesn't feel great for you, you can substitute it with another word. But it is the thing in you that is divine. It is your soul. It is your higher self. However you want to conceptualize of that thing, that is the thing. And so, in order to have self trust in the capacity that I'm talking about, you actually have to develop a connection with that thing. That's what everything I do in my work is about. It's about developing a connection to that thing, to your soul essence. And that can require deeper work with these other elements of you. That can require work with the interference that's blocking that connection. I believe it also requires activation, an activation of the DNA to be able to wake up the coding that's there, that is that thing. To be able to know thyself in a different way. That's the thing that I trust beyond anything else. That connection is very solid for me, and it moves me in every area of my life. And I'm not saying I don't get tossed around sometimes, tossed off center from that thing, but I always find my way back. I know where to find it. That thing is truth. That thing is divine, and it's you. So if you don't have a relationship to that, that is your first step. You'll be lost in the storm without it. You know, self-trust and trusting your multidimensional magic, what you're really here to do, your gifts, your abilities can be so scary for a number of reasons, right? And when we have this mechanism of looking outside for guidance in an excessive way or in a way that's not actually connected and empowered with ourselves, like we get super confused. We get really overwhelmed. This is extremely common and it's such an easy place to get to in the online space, especially if you have an open head center in human design like I do, right? Or if you have a lot of open centers in general, right? Or if you're a crystal aura like me, you're going to like be looking around and scrolling and you're intaking all of these different energies and these ideas, these opinions, you know? People have different experiences, people have different channels, people have different access points. So sometimes when we're looking for answers about what we're doing, we might go to people whom we perceive have a lot of multidimensional knowledge and experience. And it's not that that's wrong, but if we don't have that connection to that inner knowing, we can just become even more confused. And it's not even that necessarily what they're doing might be wrong, it just might not be correct for you. It might not be encompassing of what you do, you know? I'm also 5'1" in human design, and that one line really likes information. And it's not wrong to want to seek out information. I love seeking out information, you know? And I'm a generator, so it gives that sacral something to respond to, right? I like to seek out and integrate information, but I have to be extremely careful extremely careful of what I'm taking in and passively accepting as true or as even like relevant or appropriate for me. Something can actually be true, but it's not even it's not relevant for me or my path, you know. And the other thing with the online space is that it's like, if you're anything like me and you're connected to a lot of healers, coaches, service providers, marketing experts, sales experts, branding experts, graphic experts, business coaches, right? People are selling things, as they should. If you've got an online business, hopefully you are too. I sell things on the internet too. It's a beautiful thing. And I love when people speak out with really confident voices about what they're selling. But one of the things with selling and marketing is that, you know, people are addressing problems, you know, and then they're positioning what they've got, you know, available as a solution to certain problems. And if you don't have this deep connection to yourself, if you don't have self trust, uh, it's really easy to spin into self doubt and say, oh my God, you know, this person over here is saying that I need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And if I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to fail, or, right? Or I'm out of integrity, or whatever, you know? Oh, probably the reason why I'm not where I want to be is because I don't have an email list and I don't know how to start an email list. And so I don't know what to, you know, it's like there's so many different things. And honestly, you've got to check in with, is this even a problem for me that I need help solving? Like, is that really true for me? Is that really relevant for me? Is this content actually even meant for me? Does it actually even apply to me? A lot of the content out there too, and this is just speaking from like a business and marketing perspective, is it's like some of it is really geared towards 3D. And I'm not saying that strategy, if you've got like a spiritual business, isn't important to implement, because strategy honestly is just a process. It's just a process to achieve a certain outcome or to do a certain thing, have it go a certain way. Like that's all it is. You know, we need that. But we can't put it before our connection to our purpose and mission, like our connection to ourselves, our connection to what we're meant to bring through, right? It's got to come after that. It's got to come after that. It's got to come to back it, to direct it, to funnel it, you know? And it has to be really and truly aligned with what we feel and know in an embodied way is correct for us. It's not going to be the same for everyone. And I'm going to tell you a lot of old marketing tactics and stuff. Like, it's going to do more to cut you off from your channel and put you inside of boxes that actually cut you off from your magic and your power than it will to amplify your magic and your power and help you to achieve what you want to achieve. We need people outside of ourselves, okay? This is kind of the paradox, or the, you know, the paradox that I'm kind of painting a picture about for you. We do need people outside of ourselves. We do need people that can help us in certain areas, that can affirm certain things to us, that can reflect certain things to us, that can ask us questions, that can hold space for our process of becoming clear, that have, you know, keys that we don't have. It's so important to resource. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you you have all the answers inside of you in a way that like all you need to do is be a one woman show or a one person show and never ask anyone for support or help ever and never invest in that ever. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you need to be engaging with that help and support from a place of empowered, connected, knowing. And you need to be able to trust that you can discern accurately what support is truly aligned for you and when. You have that capability. It's just about reconnecting to that, cultivating that, right? So, you know, self trust can be really scary. And there's so many different layers behind this. I'm always talking about layers. I'm sure you guys have probably noticed by now, but it's just the way that I perceive things. It's the way that I perceive reality. And I don't find it to be of great service to just hit on one layer and then be done with it. That's not the way that my life works. That's not the way that I work with human beings. Things are multi layered, things are multidimensional, right? We have these childhood layers, you know, that are really important to be with and work with. We have soul fracturing. It's really important to find processes for soul retrieval to bring more of our essence back into our bodies, right? Also, with this, when you are beginning to learn to work with your gifts or to step forward with them, one of the biggest things that I see, and I've experienced this as well, is a big fear about actually being out of integrity. And I don't even necessarily want to make that wrong, because one of the things that that tells me, if you have that fear, is that integrity really matters to you, you know? And that's beautiful. It should. You know, like, because I'm not saying, I'm not the person that's going to tell you, yeah, like you download something tonight, go out there and start doing it tomorrow with literally like no integration of what's happening, like no practices to clear or shield or, you know, identify if the beings or energies that you're working with are pure. Like that shit is incredibly important, you know? However, not all tools will work for everyone. I am not a believer that there is one and only one correct way to do some of these things. And if you are looking for the one correct way and the only way, and you're looking around online and you're looking at different teachers, you will be confused as hell because different people have different practices and a lot of them work. You've got to be able to sense into and feel into the integrity of a person before you go to them to help you with your integrity. And a lot of times, what also needs to be addressed here is this fear of being out of integrity, of harming someone, right? That's a really big one. Like, I'm going to be out here harming people with my work or with my gifts. Um, and a lot of times, what we find with that, and this is what I work with multidimensionally with my clients, is, you know, there's past life stuff, or there are multidimensional elements of you that have engaged in some really shady shit in the past. I've had a few of these myself, including a lifetime where I cursed a lot of people, It's a lot of karmic implications for that one. A lifetime where I was like a preacher and it was a very culty type thing that I was doing. And it's interesting because these are also like soul themes, right? So sometimes when you've been on one side of a dynamic, when we look at past life experiences, you've at one point in time been on the other side of that dynamic. So it's kind of interesting how that works, right? So these are things that might need to be looked at and moved through and corrected in your energetic field, right? And then there is also the very profound, very real, very deep fear of persecution. I know a lot of you will relate to that one, especially those of you who are priestesses, right? Multidimensionally, and who have a lot of priestess lifetimes, my fellow keepers of the sacred rose orders. Or you've had witch lifetimes, pagan lifetimes, you know, oracle lifetimes. There have been so many experiences where you may have been persecuted in quite devastating ways or witnessed very devastating experiences of persecution. That stays in your cells, that stays in your DNA, that stays in your field a lot of times, you know. And so we've got to look at that and we've got to clear that. Because I'm pretty damn sure that most of you listening are not here to repeat any of those patterns. You're actually here to do the opposite. And you might be here to bring back some of the sacred wisdom that was all but lost, right? So I want to move into speaking about like one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about talking about this and working with people on this now is that we're in a really unique time in our collective history in terms of spiritual knowledge, gifts, and abilities. And so I believe it's important to have reverence for the traditions that have been around for thousands of years. And if you are called to study in a specific tradition with a specific teacher that is very ancient, you know, like a tantric tradition or a yoga tradition or, you know, a shamanic tradition that's really like established and rooted, an energy healing tradition, right? Like Reiki or something like that. Please follow that pull. Please trust, you know, what your soul path is guiding you towards. And that's beautiful. I have a lot of reverence for these very established traditions that have been on the planet for a very long time. And there are new things coming in. They are not gifts, abilities, and access points that have been present on our planet for thousands of years, or for hundreds of years, or for even tens of years. They're fucking new. And in some ways, they're not actually new. They're just very, very, very ancient, but they've been lost. In some cases, this is it, right? I'm talking about pre-biblical. I'm talking about tech from Lemuria, from Atlantis, from Chem, from Avalon, right? Many of you have had lifetimes in within these civilizations and have trained to be able to do certain things. To heal with sound, to heal with your voice, to work with energy in a completely different way, to work with sacred geometry, to work with the elements, right? And what's also coming in, and this is also to do with in the current timeline, we are essentially, in some ways, repeating the very same things that were going on in Atlantis and Lemuria, kind of right around the time of the fall. And so we're having opportunities to do it differently, right? This is part of why people, I would say, especially in the last several years, are really interested in Lemuria and Atlantis specifically. That remembrance is waking up in us because in some of these lifetimes and in other planes, we made the agreement that we were going to come back at this specific moment in history and bring back the tools, bring back the knowledge, bring back the frequencies. And it's not going to look the same as it did then because things are different now. You know, the temples we create might be more so online, right? But we're still here to recreate the temples. We're here to bring the ancient knowledge, right? And then there are other elements that are coming in that genuinely are completely new. You know, they are influenced by the galactics. They are influenced by the angelics. These are new frequencies, new modalities, new technologies that the world has literally never seen before. And you chose them and packed them into your little DNA strands before you came in. But because of this, many people are struggling because they're looking around and they don't see people doing what they're doing. There's nobody with a manual for them. Like they go to the Reiki trainings and they ask people questions and they don't get answers. They go to, really accepted like energy healing workbooks. They try to learn. It doesn't line up with what they're experiencing. And it is enough to make people want to hide their gifts. Ask me how I know. It is enough to make people feel inadequate, like they don't know enough, to make people feel very lost and confused. The answer is not in a book. And I'm just going to say that. The answer is not in a book. There is no manual. There is no fucking manual because you are creating the manual. And this is also part of the learning of souls at this time. Can you blaze a trail? Can you innovate? Can you trust? Can you trust? Can you trust what you're here to do? Can you trust your own channel? And once again, I'm not saying don't go get support from others. But I will say, I highly recommend, and I don't care if it's me or not, I highly recommend getting support from those who encourage you to develop your own connection and trust what comes through your channel. if you are looking for that kind of support, if you can't find the manual, I do want to share with you that I would love to be the person to help guide you towards your own answers. And I will always give tools. I will always offer foundational elements to help you to really be in integrity with what you are doing. But the core of what I will do is to help you to find those answers through your own channel, to locate them, and to develop the fortitude to stand in that knowing as you bring your new healing technologies out into the world. And yes, make money with them. Many of you are meant to do that. And you fucking know it. Do not hide your gifts away. The world needs it. They're there for a reason. They're there to be utilized in a way that totally fulfills and lights you up, and in a way that is in deep service to the collective. It's okay, nobody else is doing it. It's actually great. So, I do have a 6-month one-to-one mentorship program with me that I'm opening up now. It is called Uncharted, and it is specifically for multidimensional code keepers who are having new technologies come through them and who want to be able to navigate that experience and discover the ways that they're meant to work with others and cultivate that deep sense of trust and self-trust within themselves, you know, and trust in the magic. You are the magic. So if that sounds great to you, if you resonated with this, please reach out for me. You can email me jp11coach@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope that this benefited you in some way. Keep sharing your authentic codes with the world. It's needed, it's valued, it's appreciated, and I love you. Thank you so much. Bye.